Stop it. Okay. All right. I get nervous when I talk for too long, and then I have that oral fixation. So maybe I'll just chew my nails instead. All right. So this is from River. Hello, Miss Molly. I love your show. Thank you. What you said about listening to podcasts when you were going through a difficult time hits the mark with me. I'm stuck home with a chronic pain, medical disability, and your podcast, along with a few others, keeps me sane. So thank you for that. Oh, well, thank you so much for listening, and I'm glad that it can, help with your situation of being stuck at home. That really sucks, and I'm sorry that you have to deal with that. That was not part of the email. That was me saying something to River, so sorry if that was confusing. I really appreciate your sharing your background with us. Putting yourself out there naked and vulnerable requires courage, or just apathy. Getting yourself out of that abusive relationship required courage. I mean, I guess so. See, oh my God, I'm doing this again where people are doing the compliment thing, and I'm just like, well, if you say so, I'm just a piece of shit. Stop being annoying. No one wants to hear you be self-deprecating all the time. But it's more funny when I'm self-deprecating. Now you're talking to yourself. All right. You quit drinking and focused on your mental and physical well-being. Turned your whole life around despite a bad start. Now you own your home and you're thriving. I hope you're proud of yourself as you should be, and a fun personality, and you're funny. Thanks. Face it, you're amazing. Thanks. Thank you for thinking that about me. I'm sorry, this is so long. I feel like I should have cut out all the nice things about me and just focus on the questions. It sounds like you're saying the way your parents raised you by sheltering you and isolating you gave you a big handicap when it came to going out into the world on your own. I'm helping raise a granddaughter now, and obviously we can't shelter and isolate her to the point she never learns how to function socially. When I was little, both my parents worked, so I was free to do whatever I wanted. That doesn't work so well either. We want to keep our kids safe from this world that's becoming scarier and scarier, but they must eventually go out into it on their own. How much do you expose them to, and when? What would have helped you? If you could go back in time, what would you do differently, or have your parents do differently? So I'm one of those people, and if you're an avid listener of my podcast, River, as it seems that you are, then you'll probably have heard last week's episode with David, where there's this recollection of there is no past and there is no future. There is only present. So the past you cannot change. The future you cannot determine. You can't magically arrive there. You're only in your present. So it's, for me, it's not anything that I would go back in time and do differently necessarily. And when I was sheltered, it was kind of like sheltered in different ways. For instance, like things that had to do with the church a lot. So I don't know if you are religious. I mean, if you are, more power to you. I just kind of doubt most people who listen to this podcast are, but I could be wrong. Most of my sheltering had to do with things like sexuality. So also in my conversation with David in last week's episode, talked a lot about how kind of unparented we were in a lot of ways. Would just take my bike out into the woods like a feral animal and spend a lot of time away from home. Like I would just take my dog out at the time, had this golden retriever growing up, and just go on my rollerblades, my bicycle, and just go and do whatever. Or, when I did get a car, just drive and go places. And I mean, it's like, you have to check in eventually, but a lot of things were very unparented, which is like different than now. But I feel like a lot of things that perhaps they could have done differently is maybe been more open talking to me about actually like becoming a woman. So I feel like a lot of the big sheltering was things like I should not have been afraid of my own body naked. Like arriving at my period should not have been that big of a surprise to me. I shouldn't have. But I mean, I think that kind of comes back to the whole religious thing, where anything to do with sex, nudity, any of that stuff is kind of taboo. So if that's not really something that you're as worried about, I think just being able to talk at an appropriate age, at an appropriate time, and in an appropriate way with a young person that you're caring for, whether it's your child or granddaughter or whatever, being able to kind of talk to them about how it is that you should be treated by the opposite sex or the same sex, if that's their proclivity. Like there's nothing wrong with either thing. That was something else that was taught to me very young, is like my grandmother, rest in peace, she had a female partner later in life, and growing up, like, she was my favorite. I loved her so much, and she was such a hippie. Just, she would send me postcards from like all over the country, all the different places that she was, and every now and then we'd visit her in a different place, and she was just this beautiful soul. And I didn't really understand for a long time that she was like with a woman. It didn't compute to me that there was any real difference until I was a bit older and started hearing things from my other grandmother, and even things from my mother about that, and like, oh, she's a lesbian and it's this and that. My grandmother, not the awesome one. When I was like 12ish and I didn't really have an interest in boys, would tell people that I was a lesbian, and I inherited it from my other grandmother and like that side of the family. And like I it comes back to that thing of people hating what they don't understand, right? And it's like, oh, I don't understand this, so I'm afraid of it, or I hate it, or I'm gonna lash out against it. And like, I didn't have any idea of really how I was supposed to be treated sexually, how I was supposed to allow other people to treat me and my body, like caring about myself, caring about my body. Like it was like, don't have sex until marriage. That didn't work. Like, and it wasn't even me going out of my way to try to have sex before marriage. Like, I didn't get a talk about STDs. I didn't really understand anything about condoms, like anything like that or to do with that. And the way that I lost my virginity is was not my choice, if you're picking up what I'm laying down, and was a very horrible experience that ended up causing me to disassociate a lot from sex for many, 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 many years, and ended up seeing sex as a thing that just was, and a thing that you just do, and not really having care about myself or my body in that regard. And that's not something that it wasn't talked about, it wasn't something that I felt that I could openly discuss with my family or any of, that kind of area that I was in at the time. And some of the people that I did tell about it would say things like it was my fault, or or like, you were asking, all this kind of stuff. And so I just kind of shut down from it, and I didn't really examine it much again until I was in therapy. And that's a very long period of time from it happening to actually re-examining it as an adult and having to figure out how that kind of ended up setting up my present from the past. So it was a lot of disassociation, a lot of things that resurfaced that I was like, damn, I didn't know that your brain could actually block out a lot of traumatic things to allow you to just try to live your life as normally as possible. And it was a very difficult thing to kind of go back through and address and all that kind of stuff. So I think there's a difference between sheltering someone and keeping someone safe with knowledge. So I think that there are good, like, I don't think that when someone is like a child, you have to discuss anything necessarily sexual or whatever with them. I think that's kind of weird. But once people start going through puberty, like that is a huge change. And when you if you can learn about how you should be treated and different things about your body, and sex and all of that kind of stuff in a way that's healthy and helpful by people who love you, then I think that that is a better way to set somebody up for success. Because not only should you kind of have a basis for how other people should treat you, but you should have a base level of self-respect and value for yourself, for your body, for your mind, for everything that you are before you kind of head out into the world and you don't have necessarily your family or the same friends like propping you up and helping you see things for how they are. Because once you hit adulthood and once you go to college or you move out, I mean, I'm not friends with any of the people that I was friends with in high school or college or or anything like that. And a lot of big life things change, and at the end of the day you only do have yourself to fall back on and to rely on. And if you can at the very least, you know, rely on yourself and respect yourself at some base level, I think you're going to have a lot easier time going out into the world and experiencing different people and traversing different situations. So I hope that answered your question.